Good afternoon, everybody. All right, so I am Tim Rogers. I'm the library director here in Jacksonville, and I have the great pleasure of being able to introduce incredible speakers and authors and things like that. So I want to thank you all for being here. But before we go any further, I want you all to do me a favor. I want you to reach into your pocket or your purse or your bag. I want you to take out your phone. And I want you to find the little button that makes it quiet. And when I say quiet, I mean silent. And if you would, silence that phone. Okay? We want to make sure that this is a great experience for everybody, and we want you to enjoy it. And sometimes that can be a little bit distracting when, excuse me, a phone goes off in the middle. I've already said that I'm Tim Rogers. I'm the director of the library, and although how many people have been here for a couple of hours already? Okay. How many people got here at 6 o'clock in the morning to get your wristband? Yeah, those are the diehard fans. Well, we thank you very much for that level of commitment. I was not here at 6 o'clock this morning to hand out the wristbands, but I think it's great that it really shows that we've done a fantastic job of finding you someone you wanted to hear from today. This is the third annual Book Fest. It is our premier event, something that we're very proud of and something we really look forward to. The real purpose of this event is to celebrate authors and publishers, to celebrate bookstores, to celebrate illustrators, to celebrate everybody that's involved with books, including all of us who read. Without the readers, there really is no reason to create books. And so a big hand for all of you for being here today. Before we welcome Mr. Stine onto the stage, I wanted to thank some of our sponsors who, without their commitment, without their support, we wouldn't be able to do great events like this. The Jacksonville Public Library Foundation, the Joy G. Corman Endowment, Publix, the Lexington Hotel and Conference Center, San Marco Books and More, and of course our friends at Yelp. And I want to give them a big round of applause Again, without those sponsors, we couldn't have events like this, and you wouldn't be here in this room about to meet R.L. Stine. And so do me one little extra favor. If you know anybody that works or is associated with any of those sponsors, over the next month, if you see them, thank them for sponsoring this. Now, for the main event, the moment that you have all been waiting for, R.L. Stine has published countless books, including the Goosebumps Series, which I'm sure a few of you have read and heard of. They've sold more than 300 million copies in the U.S. alone, and has been translated into 32 languages across the world, making R.L. Stine one of the best-selling authors of all time. We are privileged and honored to have the Spookmaster himself here with us today. So, please, put your hands together and give R.L. Stine a warm Jacksonville.
Scaring me. Thanks a lot. It's so nice to be back in Jacksonville. Are you all wearing wristbands? Do you have them? Yeah? Did they tell you that they're electrified? Know that, right? They told me I could just press this button once. All right, just to make sure everyone's awake, and it only hurts for a few minutes. See, they don't believe me. Okay. That's it for wristbands. Whenever I talk to people, I always like to start out by reading a poem by another author. This is a poem by Shel Silverstein, and it's called Haunted. And I like it because it's scary and funny at the same time, which is what I try to do with my books. This is Haunted. I dare you all to go into the haunted house on Howlin' Hill, where squiggly things with yellow eyes peek past the wormy windowsill. We'll creep into the moonlit yard where weeds reach out like fingers, and through the rotted old front door a-squeaking on its hinges, down the dark and whispering hall, past the musty study, up the winding staircase. Don't step on the step that's bloody. Through the secret panel, to the bedroom, where we'll slide into the ragged, cobweb, dusty bed 10 people must have died in. And the bats will screech, and the spirits will scream, and the thunder will crash like a horrible dream. And we'll sing with the zombies, and dance with the dead, and howl at the ghost with the axe in his head. And come to think of it, what do you say we go get some ice cream instead? That's Haunted by Shel Silverstein. Here is a letter I received from a girl this week. It's a real letter. Dear R.L. Stine, I love your books. You're like the scariest man on earth. I want to know everything about you. Do you have hair? Why? Love, Grace, it says. Anyway, I get a lot of wonderful letters, and fan mail is maybe the best part of what I do. And I thought maybe you'd like to hear some letters. These are all real letters. I didn't make up any of them. These are real letters from kids. Dear R.L. Stine, I don't know if you remember me or not, but when you came to my school, I'm the one who stepped on your foot. I do remember that kid. Yeah. Dear R.L. Stine, you are my second favorite author. That was the whole letter. Talk about keeping you in suspense. Dear R.L. Stine, I like your Goosebumps books. I hope you make a lot more books. And if you die, tell a family member to finish them. That's sweet, right? That's really sweet. Dear R.L. Stine, I'm not that smart, but I like your books. Dear R.L. Stine, I'm a big fan of your Fear Street books. I've read 21 of them. I have just one question for you. Why do they end without making sense? Dear R.L. Stine, I like your books, but my passion is taxidermy. I'm 13, and blood is just my thing. I'm not the best at sports, but skinning, fleshing, and stuffing is my thing. Why do you think he wrote to me? I don't know. Dear R.L. Stine, I didn't like the ending to Horrorland number 8. Do you have an alternate ending you can send me? Dear R.L. Stine, this is a weird one. In the 18th book of Goosebumps Horrorland, the character you wrote about described me perfectly before I got my haircut. Did you possibly see me somewhere and get the idea for that character from my appearance? I told you it was weird. Dear R.L. Stine, I'm your biggest fan. I read your book so much, I need my parents to escort me to the bathroom. I really don't get that one. Maybe you've heard me tell my all-time favorite letter from all the years. This was from a boy. Dear R.L. Stine, I've read 40 of your books and I think they're really boring. How many of you have read a Goosebumps book? Oh my goodness, thank you. How many of you saw the movie? Yes. Jack Black and I are like twins, right? What's funny? What was funny about that? Well, we had a lot of fun doing that. I'm glad people like those movies. I'm going to give you a quiz, a Goosebumps quiz today. And this is to see how much you really know about Goosebumps. I'm going to read some titles to you. Some of them are real, and some of them are fake. And all you have to do is shout out, real or fake, okay? We'll see how well you do. 1. Son of Slappy. Right, real. 2. Frosty the Abominable Snowman. You're good, very good. 2 for 2. The Barking Ghost. Yes, real. Morons from Mars. Yeah, that's fake. But I think that would be a really good Goosebumps title. Don't you? And Morons from Mars is a great title. And I sent it to my editor, and I said I'd like to do a book called Morons from Mars. And he said, well, you can't do that. You might offend the morons. No, he really said that. So we can't do that. Invasion of the Body Squeezers. It's real. It's real. Nobody knows that one. It's real. It came from my nose. Fake, right. Creature Teacher. Oh, you're doing good. Attack of the Dachshund. You're right. Eat cheese and die. Fake. That one was a trick. A Ghost Wears My Socks. I thought that was a pretty scary title. Fake. Vampire Breath. I'll eat your breakfast. It's fake. The Ghost of Slappy. That's real. I killed Slappy in the last book. I had to. They made me bring him back. I don't know if I killed him off. How many of you have ever seen a ghost? Yeah? Really? No, I mean a real ghost. A real ghost, not on TV, not... You've seen a real ghost? Really? Where? Where? He's not answering. Are you a ghost? Well, I may have seen a ghost. I don't know. I'm going to tell you a story that happened to my brother Bill and me when we were kids back in Ohio. And you can help me decide if I saw a ghost or not. We grew up in a little community in Columbus, Ohio. And down the few blocks away from us, my cousin Stanley lived. He was a few years older than Bill and me. And Bill and I hated Stanley because he was really a mean guy. And my family was really poor, and we had no money at all, and I had to wear Stanley's old clothes to school. And he was very mean about it. He'd say, that sweater looked much better on me, or you look ridiculous in those pants. That's not the way I wore them. He was terrible to us. And Stanley also liked to scare us a lot. He would sleep over sometimes, and he'd stay under the bed, and when I'd come up to the bed, he'd grab my ankles, or he'd come running out of a closet just to scare us. And once he came to my birthday party, he broke in through a window wearing a black ski mask and scared all the other kids. So Bill and I we were fed up with Stanley, and all we wanted in life was to find a way to pay Stanley back. And then one day I had a plan. It turned out that this old man who lived 2 doors down, Mr. Wilson, died. He'd been very sick and he died. And a few days after he died, I was walking to school, walking past his house, and I noticed that his front door was open. And I thought, gee, somebody left Mr. Wilson's door open. I should go up and close it. So I went up his driveway, and I started to close the door, and then I thought, I've never been in this house. Maybe I'll just take a peek inside. And I stepped into the front room, and it was cold. There was no heat on in the house. And the only light came from the front window, this red morning sunlight pouring into the room. And nothing had been touched. All the furniture was there. Everything was still there. And I walked around, and I walked into Mr. Wilson's bedroom, and I had an idea about how to scare Stanley. So later in school, I found my brother, and I said, Bill, I have a perfect plan. You know Stanley is afraid of ghosts, and he's coming to dinner tomorrow night. I have a plan to scare him. What I want you to do is sneak over to Mr. Wilson's house, climb into his bed, get under the covers, cover yourself up, and I'm going to dare Stanley to come over to the house. And then I'm going to bring him into the bedroom. And when I do, you slowly rise up from under the covers, slowly rise up and say, get out of my house. I know it'll scare him to death. It's got to work. And Bill said, well, that's a great plan, but I have a trombone lesson after school tomorrow evening. And my brother he was short, but he played trombone, but he couldn't reach the low notes. His arms weren't long enough I don't know why he liked it so much. He couldn't play the low notes. I said, Bill, don't worry about it. I'll keep Stanley late at dinner and give you plenty of time to get over to Mr. Wilson's house. And so that's what we did. And the next night, Stanley came for dinner, and we had a long dinner, and then I said, Stanley, I'll bet you're afraid to go into a dead man's house. And he said, no way, lead the way. I'm not afraid. What are you talking about? So I led him over to Mr. Wilson's house. It's a very dark night, a little sliver of a moon, I remember. The ground was like crunchy hard with frost. And I led him into the house, and we stood just a little silver moonlight coming through that front window. And we stood in the living room. And I said, Stanley, I'll bet you're afraid to go into a dead man's bedroom. He said, are you kidding? Of course I'm not scared. So I led him into Mr. Wilson's bedroom, and there was the lump under the covers. And we walked in, and the covers slowly rose, and the voice shouted, get out of my house! And Stanley's eyes bulged, his mouth dropped open. He let out like a little squeak, and he turned around and he ran. It worked. He ran out of the house screaming. He left the front door open and ran out. I saw him running down the front yard and out into the street. He was terrified. I thought, oh my God, it worked. It was great. I went to the door. I watched him running down the street. And there was my brother coming up the walk with his trombone case. And he said, am I too late to scare Stanley? That's my true ghost story. Thank you. Do you think I made up part of that true story? Yeah? You think maybe I made up a lot of that true story? Maybe. That's what I do, right? Hey, I just signed on for 6 more Goosebumps books. Can you believe that? I don't know, just keep going. 26 years of Goosebumps. It's pretty good, right? Anyway, it's still fun. The new one is called It's Alive, It's Alive. It's about robots and robotics. Somebody has their own show back there. And I just finished one. Just before I came down here, I finished a Goosebumps book called The Dummy Meets the Mummy. You can guess who the dummy is. And it's about Slappy meeting an evil mummy, and they both come to life. And I just finished it, and no one has seen it. And I thought I would read just a little section of it to you today. You're the first people in the world to hear this, because I just finished it before I came down. And this is part of Dummy Meets the Mummy, and the story's told by a boy named Eric. and Aaron is late for dinner, and he comes in dragging a big chest into the dining room. "What are you dragging in here?" Mom asked, helping herself from the bowl of string beans. "Where did you get that?" I set it down on the floor and mopped the sweat off my forehead with the sleeve of my t-shirt. "At school," I said. They all stared at the wooden chest. The wood was scratched up and stained. The metal clasps were rusted. The chest looked very old. "A puppeteer came to school," I said. "He called himself Mandrake the Great." "Cornball name," Dad muttered. "Were his puppets as lame as his name?" "No," I said. "I love puppets. I have 2 clown marionettes up in my room. I make them dance and bow to each other. I do whole shows just for myself. My sister Christina says that makes me a weirdo freak." But who asked her? "Mandrake put on a funny assembly," I said. "He had about 6 puppets, and he did different voices for each one. It was a little babyish, but everyone liked it anyway." Dad took a long drink of water. "You're not explaining about the chest." "I'm getting to it," I said. "I was leaving school, and I saw Mandrake in the parking lot. He was loading his puppets into his SUV. So I went over, I told him how much I was into puppets too, and I said I liked his show." "You're still not explaining," Dad said. "Give him a chance," Mom said. "My meatloaf is getting cold," Dad complained. He always complains his food is too cold. Once he complained his ice cream was too cold. Seriously. "I don't know why," I said, "but Mandrake gave me this." "It's one of his puppets?" Christina asked. "No," I said, "it's an old ventriloquist dummy. Mandrake said it was special. He said I could have it." "Why?" Dad demanded. "Why'd he give it to you?" I shrugged. "He said he didn't need it anymore. He said he knew I'd give it a good home." Christina pushed her chair back and slid away from the table. "Can we look at it? What does it look like?" She bent down and knocked on the lid. "Anyone home?" 2 metal clasps held the lid down. I flipped one up, and Christina flipped the other one. Mom and Dad stood behind us. I slowly pulled the heavy lid open. We all gazed at the grinning dummy on its back, resting on a shiny red cloth inside the chest. The dummy had a big wooden head with dark brown hair painted on the top, big black eyes. The wood on his nose had a small chip in it. His grinning mouth was painted bright red. He was dressed in a wrinkled gray suit. His white shirt had a dark stain on the collar. His red bow tie was crooked. "Mandrake said the dummy's name is Slappy," I said. "Look, there are a bunch of papers that come with him." "What's so special about him?" Dad asked. "He has voice recognition software." "What does that mean?" Dad asked. "He can hear you when you talk to him?" "No," I said, "it means you can talk to him and he'll talk back to you." "He's programmed to say things," Christina added. Mom made a face. "He's very ugly." "You should know," the dummy shouted. We all laughed. Dad squatted down to see the dummy closer. "It really does talk. That's genius." "Yeah, genius," the dummy said. "Don't be jealous just because your IQ is the same number as your shoe size." We laughed again. "Awesome," Christina said. "Take him out of the case, Aaron. Can I hold him?" The dummy appeared to stare right at her. "Don't hold me. Hold your breath. It stinks." I laughed. "I don't know if I like this dummy," Mom said. "It's very nasty." "Talk about nasty," Slappy said. "Have you smelled your dinner?" "Maybe you should leave it in the case," Mom said. "Don't worry, Mom," I said. "Mandrake gave me his phone number." I pulled a small slip of paper from my jeans pocket. "He said if there's a problem with the dummy, I can call any time. He said he'll come and take the dummy back." Slappy appeared to gaze at me. "Is that really your face? Or did a bird fly over and drop something on your neck?" I couldn't help it. That joke made me laugh. But I was the only one who did. Mom and Dad and Christina stared at the grinning dummy. "I'm sorry," Mom said. "I think he's a little creepy." I lifted Slappy from the case. "Mom, listen. He just has a bunch of jokes programmed into him. It's not like he's alive. And that's a chapter from Dummy Meets Mummy. Thank you very much. And of course, they call the number. They immediately want to give Slappy back, and the number's been changed. There's no way to reach him. They're stuck with him. And then the mummy comes in. We have time for questions. You have questions for me? And someone's going to have a mic so I can hear you, I think. Someone's going to come into the audience and help me out here. Yes? Well, they're looking for it now. You want to hear one more really short story? Yeah, do you? Listen, I have one more really short story. Maybe you'll like this one. It's called Joe is Not a Monk. You ready? Okay. I'll do the story, then we'll do questions. Okay? Great. The story's called Joe is Not a Monster. Believe me, I know Joe better than anybody. Joe is not a monster. He's a sweet guy. He's a pussycat. He wouldn't hurt a flea. How did the nasty rumors get started? I really don't know. Someone at Joe's school must have started them. Someone at Joe's school whispered to someone else that Joe was a monster, and the rumor spread. Now the whole school is against Joe. Kids are frightened of him. Kids laugh and point at him behind his back. The braver kids shout, "Hey, monster," when Joe walks past. Then they laugh and hoot when they see Joe turn red. Someone wrote monster on Joe's locker. Because of the ugly rumors, no one will hang out with Joe. Joe eats by himself in a corner of the lunchroom. No one will choose him for after-school soccer games. No one will dance with him at the school dances. No one even talks to him in the halls. Yesterday, a big kid from the upper school punched Joe really hard in the chest and said, "Go away from here, monster." Joe cried all the way home. Let me tell you something about Joe. He is very hurt by these rumors. He has feelings, just like everyone else. Joe wants to have friends. He really wants people to like him. He is a nice guy. He has a great sense of humor. He can be a good friend. Joe didn't ask me to speak for him, but I am speaking out anyway. I want to set things straight once and for all. Joe is not a monster. Not a monster. How do I know so much about Joe? Well, that question is easy to answer. No one is as close to Joe as I am. No one knows Joe better than I do, because I am Joe's second head. Thank you very much. Who has a question for me? Where are you? What's happening? Pick some people.
Hi, Mr. R.L. Stine. My name is Gabby, and I just want to say it's a dream come true to be in the same room as you. You are a legend, and thank you so much for coming.
Gabby, thank you. Gabby.
I'm such a huge fan of you, and
you're too nice. You're too nice. Was it a dream or a nightmare?
A dream. An absolute dream. And my favorite character is Slappy, and my question is, how did you get the concept for Slappy?
You know, I don't really know. When I was a kid, I really liked puppets, and I had a ventriloquist dummy when I was a kid, and I did all kinds of funny shows with him, but I never thought of them. There was an old British movie called Dead of Night, which I saw when I was a kid, and it had a ventriloquist dummy that came to life and ruined his ventriloquist life, and maybe that stayed in my head, and then it just, that's how it came. I don't really know how we came up with it. One thing that I love the title of the first book, and Slappy wasn't even the star. It was Night of the Living Dummy. And there were like other dummies. Slappy came in pretty late, but people liked him right away.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gabby.
Lauren, come over here.
Where are you?
I'm really glad that you went to the show, and I love your books. And my question is, how long does it take to write a Goosebumps book?
It takes, good question. It takes a week to plan it, because I do an outline of every book first. I do a chapter by chapter outline. So it takes me about a week to figure out the whole story, and then 2 weeks to write it. But see, I've done all the work. It's all in the outline. I know when I sit down to write the book, I know everything that's going to happen in the book. I've done all the hard part, and then I can just have fun writing. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Clayton, and my question is, where was the words that made Slappy came to life in, kind of like the chapter of the Dummy Meets the Mummy?
What about those words?
Where were they?
Where were they? They were in my head. They were in my head. I made them up.
Oh.
Yeah. That's where they came from. All right.
Hello?
Let's get some older people too, okay? Hello? Did somebody ask a question? What's
How
that?
do you come up with the titles?
You know what I do? People always say, how do you get the ideas? Sorry. How do you get the ideas for the book? And I don't even really think about ideas. I only think of titles. Every book I write, I think I'm backwards from most authors, right? Because I have to start with the title. One day I was walking my dog in the park in New York City where I live, and these words popped into my head. Say cheese and die. Where do they come from? I don't know. There I was, say cheese and die. I thought, great title. What would the story be? And then I started thinking, what if there was this evil camera and what that showed pictures of the future? What if some kids found the camera? What if they start? And that's how I got that story. And that's pretty much how I do every book. It starts with a title. Questions?
Hello. Number one, thank you for coming here today. I just wanted to let you know that I'm really glad that you actually did the Fear Street novels too. I started with Goosebumps in elementary school, and then I went to Fear Street. My question is, how did you transition from Goosebumps to Fear Street?
It was the opposite. Fear
Street, then Goosebumps.
Fear Street came first. I was busy killing off teenagers.
Yeah, which is
I killed a lot of teenagers. But this is a terrible story, but I was doing Fear Street novels for teenagers, basically teens in terror. And my editors came to me and said, we should try a younger version. We should try scary books for 7 to 12-year-olds. And here's the kind of businessman I am. I said, no, I don't want to do that. Great, right? And I didn't, I thought it would mess up the audience for Fear Street. But they kept after me, so I said, finally, if I can think of a good name for a kid series, we could try a few younger scary books. And so I was trying to think of a name, and one day I was reading TV Guide, and in those days it had all the TV listings were in the middle of the magazine. You could see what was on television. And there was this tiny little ad at the bottom of the page, and it said, it's Goosebumps Week on Channel 11. And I just stared at it, and I knew, I said, this is perfect. We'll call it Channel 11. That's a really bad joke. Now I apologize for that joke. No, but that's where Goosebumps came from. That's where the name came from. This tiny little ad.
Good afternoon, Mr. Stine. My question is, other than the clown, are there any other characters that you and Stephen King have coincided with and jokingly debated about?
I only met him once, and sorry. So we never really debated about anything. And I don't think I have too many characters. The one time I had a conversation with Stephen King, he accused me of using every amusement park plot a person could use. He said, you didn't leave any for anybody else. You've done every single one. And but that's about it. We had a short conversation, but it was really nice. Actually, I'll tell you this. I was talking with him, and I said, you know, Steve, a magazine once called me a training bra for you. Which is true. How do you like that? In this magazine, I said, it called me a literary training bra for Stephen King. And he said, yeah, I know that. He knew about it. I don't always tell that story. Yes.
My name's Aiden Miller, and what was your favorite Goosebumps book?
Oh, I think my favorite is The Haunted Mask. You know that one? I think that's my best Halloween story.
Why is it your favorite?
It's about a girl named Carly Beth who wants to be really scary at Halloween time. And she tries on this ugly green mask, and it sticks to her face. And she can't get it off. It becomes part of her skin. And it turns her evil. And this is the only Goosebumps book that came from something that happened in real life. When my son Matt was a real little guy, it was Halloween time, and he was down on the floor, and I was watching him from the doorway, and he tried on a green rubber Frankenstein mask. And he pulled it down over his head, and then he couldn't get it off. And I'm watching from the doorway, and he's tugging and tugging. And I thought, what a great idea for us. I should have helped him, right? Yes, instead, I went and started making notes. Oh, yeah, the haunted mask, right? And the poor guy was sitting there, stuck in a mask. And that's really where it came from. How many of you have seen the TV show of The Haunted Mask? Oh, a lot. Okay, I'll tell you the story. This was the first Goosebumps show that we filmed. And we had a wonderful young actress named Catherine Long who played the part of Carly Beth. And maybe you remember very early in the story, two boys are teasing Carly Beth in the lunchroom. And they give her a sandwich with a worm in it. And do you remember this scene? We were getting ready to film this scene, and we went down to the set, and they had the lunchroom, and they made a sandwich, and they put a plastic worm in the sandwich, and put it down, and Carly Beth, Catherine Long, came to us, and she said, you know what? I can't really do this scene well with a plastic worm. I need a real worm in the sandwich. So we said, okay. And we went out and we got a real worm and we put it in the sandwich and we started to film, and the two boys gave Carly Beth the sandwich and she took it, she chewed it up. Yuck, right? You want to hear the really sad part? Here's the really sad part. We had to shoot the scene 12 times. 12 worms. That's a true behind-the-scenes story. Who has a question?
R.L. Stine. What made you want to make Goosebumps books?
I just like scaring kids. It's a great job, you know? Someone has to do it, right? How are we doing here? Got time for some more questions? Who has a really good question? Where are you?
My name's Brielle, and my name is Casey.
Hi.
My question is, how many books have you made?
No, don't make me say the number. Now, if I say how many books, I'll have to go take a nap. I've read, it sounds great. I've written maybe 350 books. But, yeah, no, it's okay. I mean, I wouldn't know what else to do all day.
And do you enjoy it?
Yeah, I still do. I said I just signed on for 6 more. And I'm also doing a series of graphic novels. These are my first comic books. It's for a series I'm doing called Just Beyond. And it's comics for kids. It's sort of Goosebumps stories, only in comic form. The first one comes out in September. So yeah, I still love it. I love it. I started when I was 9 years old. That's when I started writing. I was this weird kid. I'm in my room typing all afternoon. I don't know why I liked it so much. And my mother would stand outside my door and she'd say, "What's wrong with you? Go outside and play. Go outside." And I'd say, "It's boring out there." Type. And I've been doing it ever since. Next.
Is Mr. Wood real?
No. Next.
Hi, Mr. Stine. I just wanted to thank you for coming to Jacksonville. I'm actually 37. I've been reading your books since I was a young child. And I kept all of my Goosebumps books and introduced my son to the Goosebumps, who is now obsessed. And he's now going to introduce him to his new little brother.
Yeah.
But he does have a question for you.
I get to scare a lot of generations, don't I?
My favorite was Camp Jelly Jam. I love Camp Jelly Jam.
Yeah. People keep asking me for a sequel to Camp Jelly Jam, but
that would be great. I would read it now.
I don't know what that would be. I don't know. We killed him off.
Mr. Stine, what's your least favorite monster?
My least favorite monster where? In my books?
Yes, sir.
I don't know. I hate questions like that.
My least favorite is Slappy.
Yeah. I don't know my least favorite monster. I like some more than others. But the dogs in the barking ghost I didn't like very much. There's an answer for you, right? Well, you're about my age, my son's age. And my son Matt's claim to fame. He never read a Goosebumps book. Isn't that horrible? Can you imagine? He was the right age and everything. And he never read one just to make me crazy. He knew how to get Dad, right? And he read only Garfield comics. That's all he read his whole childhood. Garfield comics. He had every collection. And he'd be in his bed every night reading Garfield. And then one night, my wife Jane and I peeked into his room, and he was reading Calvin and Hobbes. He had graduated. We were so proud. And so he read, that's all he read. He never read anything. And then he went off to college, and he was an English major. Go figure, right? Okay, onward. A few more, then I'd be happy to sign books.
Hi, my name is Abby, and I never really read the Goosebumps book because I'm a crybaby as a child. But do you have any advice for aspiring authors or writers?
I never give advice to writers. Never. Because I always think they're like me. And they really know from a very early age what they want to do. That they really want to write. I knew when I was 9 years old. And I think people who are going to become writers feel the same way. And they don't need me to say, be sure to read a lot. Or be sure to write every day. Because they're going to do that anyway. So I never give advice. Everyone hates that answer. I really need a new one, don't I? Everyone hates that. Who has a good question?
Hello.
Hi.
I just want to say I love you, and I became a great writer because of you.
Oh, thank you. Oh,
Since I was a little girl.
thank you so much. People are too nice. Too nice. Thank you very much. You know, my wife has a very hard job trying to keep me humble. No, that's her whole job. I hear such nice things, and it's so rewarding for me and so wonderful. But Jane's job is to keep me humble, and she's very good at it. One day I was on the Today Show, and it went really well. It's a really good interview, and I got home, and there was a note from Jane on my desk, and it said, "You were great, now plunge the toilet." Kind of perfect, right? Listen, I really enjoyed talking with you. Thank you very much.